Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our presentation today on understanding the financial aid process. I am Darren Worcester with EMA and enrollment.org, and we are really excited to have you with us today. Today's presentation is brought to you with support from St. Mark's School, and we are very grateful for them for providing that support. If you don't know, St. Mark's is a day and boarding school for grades 9 through 12 in Massachusetts. We'll get an opportunity during this presentation to get to learn a little bit more about their school as well. The St. Mark's team has done a great job of organizing those and bundling them together. So we're going to go through and try to address as many of the questions that you submitted at registration as we possibly can. The one caveat I will give to that is we're looking to address questions on a high level about the process that's going to apply to the most people here. If very specific questions about your personal situation, I would ask you to please go to the school and each school that you're applying to individually, because you may get different answers from each school. So that's definitely something that you want to make sure you do, and you will probably hear that advice throughout this presentation. All right, so without any further ado from me, I'm going to hand you off to Channing Weymouth. She's the Director of Financial Aid and the Associate Director of Admissions at St. Mark's School. Channing, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Darren. Hi, my name is Channing Weymouth. As Darren said, I'm the Director of Financial Aid at St. Mark's. I'm also the lacrosse coach, and I oversee one of the dormitories. And I've been at St. Mark's for 12 years. Thank you so much for joining this webinar and giving us the opportunity to answer some of your questions and hopefully make this process less stressful and a little more understandable as you go through it. And I just want to piggyback on what Darren said, that we represent a 9th through 12th grade residential and day school. And so we can't really speak to the lower and middle school entry points in their financial aid process, but we are sort of speaking in generalizations. So hopefully we can be helpful to anyone applying for financial aid. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Laurie Kalapinski, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Channing and Darren. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Laurie Kalapinski, and I am the Admission and Financial Aid Coordinator at St. Mark's School. I've been at St. Mark's School for 22 years in the same roles. I'm also on the Financial Aid Committee, and I really love and have a passion for what I do. I love being able to help families through the admission process and the financial aid process, and hopefully, hold your hand a little bit and make the process less daunting for you. So on that note, I'd like to spend a few minutes going over kind of the financial aid process. Again, as Darren and Channing have said, I'm going to be speaking a lot from the St. Mark's perspective, but I will try to make it general as well and give you tips if you're applying to other schools and maybe not St. Mark's School at all. So we're going to go over now in the next few minutes kind of the what, where, and how do you apply for financial aid. Okay, so the first few things are to look at each school's website for which you are going to be applying or think you're applying for financial aid. You'll look for a page usually dedicated to financial aid. It might be called financial aid. It could be called tuition assistance, affordability, or tuition awards. So start there. And as you look on that page, you're going to probably see in bold, like ours is, school requirements, and they are going to vary depending on which schools you're applying. As Channing said, maybe what grade level you're applying, all those different things. And of course, the deadlines. We have to stress the deadlines are really important. And we'll get into that further a little bit down in this presentation. But so starting there, then other things you should probably know. There's going to be an application fee to apply. Generally, that range is $60 to $75, depending on the application and platform that the school uses. But there are some situations where a financial aid waiver may be available. Again, I can't speak to other schools. However, there could be one depending on your circumstances and your qualifications, or again, the school. So let's now look at the step-by-step application if you were applying to St. Mark's Financial Aid. And the great thing about this is it's called the step-by-step guide right on our website. So if you're somehow following along, you'll probably see this, or you might check it out after this webinar. But I will quickly go through the highlights for you on this, okay? So the first thing you're going to notice is the deadline, like I mentioned. Ours is January 15th. That's actually a pretty common date, but some schools may vary. I've seen January 1st, I've seen January 31st, and then like ours, January 15th. It is easy to remember because it's the same date as our admission application. Okay, so that's getting that out of the way. Then you're going to see, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to apply? And what platform that would be on. For us, again, that's the Clarity application. And we, of course, have a link right there. So it's going to bring you right to the Clarity application. That's really the meat of your financial aid application for us. And again, most likely several schools. That will walk you through. There's obviously FAQ guides on their websites too on how to do this. They host webinars, which are great. There's one left if you are applying through Clarity. I believe it might be December 10th, and you could check that out. And before I explain a few more steps here, I'm just going to interject and say that if you're filling this out and you have questions, or you really don't know what a question means, or you've got a technical glitch, let's say, you should go to Clarity, their technical support. They are fantastic. They are there for us, the administrators, but of course, the families. You're their bread and butter, and they want to help you through this process. So we've got that under the belt. Now, what else you might be wondering is required besides the Clarity application? For us, it's fairly simple. It's going to be completing an IRS form. Currently, that form is 4506. And once you do that, it will give Clarity access and in turn us access to any of the taxes you filed with the government. That's the only thing it would give us access to. Occasionally, there might be other things we need. We might get into that later in the Q&A section or one of my colleagues adding to that, but let's just leave it at that those are the requirements. So far, so good, everybody? Okay. All right. And then I also just want to continue with the timeline to let you know how it works for St. Mark's. After you've done all this, you're sitting and waiting anxiously. Then you will finally get a decision about your application for admission and financial aid on March 10th. If you've been awarded money and, of course, accepted to our school, you have 1 month. So you have till April 10th to make that decision if you're going to accept it and come to St. Mark's or have to decline it for whatever reason. So that is, in a nutshell, the timeline. Then, if we go back to a few other points I'd like to make or tips for you. Again, we went over, we use Clarity, but please know there are, of course, other platforms out there used by different schools. Probably the most common is Clarity, SSS, and TADS, but there are a few others. So that's why it's so critical that you look at the school you're going to be applying to know which platform they accept. It's not universal. Again, it's going to vary by school. And the great thing is if you are applying to multiple schools that take the same platform, it's one common application. And you're allowed to then choose, like a drop down, the different schools for which you are applying. Conversely, and unfortunately, if different schools take different platforms, you are filling out more than one financial aid application. So I might as well state the obvious there. And then, let's see, I just have a few more tips if you bear with me. So, okay, we went over the technical support. Other important things, just a few more here before I pass it on. So we encourage you to let the schools know, please, that you're applying for financial aid. It's really important for a variety of reasons. One, so that the school is not surprised to find out really late in the process, or even after they've reviewed your admission application, that you're now applying for aid. Therefore, we also want to make sure you're in the right timeline, in the pipeline for financial aid. Financial aid, no matter what school, is limited. We have limited budgets, and when those are allocated, the money may be gone. So just let the schools know. It also will help you be in the loop and get communications from the financial aid office, whether it's updates, reminders of what you're missing, all those general things. Okay. And then, sorry, one more thing. Okay, spam. We all know, well, maybe we all know what spam is. Please double check that the platform in the school for which you're applying is in your safe senders list, because you may miss some things if it goes to your spam. And you might want to check your spam folder occasionally in case you are missing emails from us or from the platform. And oh, I feel like there's one more thing. There is one more thing. Sorry, almost done. Okay, just to go back on that deadline, January 15th, we are going to encourage you, even though that's the hard deadline, to get yours in early or before the 15th if you can, because that is a national deadline, like I mentioned, for several schools, even some colleges and universities. So guess what? The website's going to be really slow. It may even crash. I hate to say it, but it's been known to do that before. You'll have slow loading times. You also may go to submit and have that thing where it's paused out, timed out. We all know that swirling circle. And then it could even lose your data. You don't want that to happen. So save yourself the headache and get it done early if you can. And I think that's all. I know that was a lot of information coming at you. Thanks everybody for listening to that.
That was awesome. I'm going to add a couple more tips. One is just reminders. And as Laurie said, it's really important to let schools know that you're applying for financial aid, and do so in that time frame, because we've had families reach out on March 10th when they get their acceptance letter and a full pay contract and saying, but I need financial aid, and they missed that. And then at that point, a lot of schools, their budgets are exhausted. They've made their offers, and it just becomes really, really tough to find that. It might be impossible to find money at that point in the process. So do please pay attention to deadlines. And another thing just to know is that the financial aid for St. Mark's and most other high schools, it is grant money, not loans. So it's been money that's been raised by the school to support your child, and they do not need to be repaid. It's not repaid. And just a reminder too, that money is coming from that school directly, not from the platform that you're applying through for financial aid. Let's see. Another thing to just note is that the information that you submit is confidential to that financial aid committee at that school. And we ask that you keep your award information confidential when you receive your award on March 10th. So it kind of goes both ways, that this is between the school and your family, and just specifically the school's financial aid committee and your family. And so that confidentiality is important to note. I'm going to share with you some things to expect to answer in your financial aid application if you haven't started it already. And just to know that there are going to be questions about a variety of things. Some questions will be an overview questions about your employment, your family makeup, your income specifically, questions about your assets such as housing, including primary residence, any additional real estate, your retirement accounts, bank accounts, business ownership, 529s, and other investments. So there will be questions there. You can expect questions on your expenses, including open-ended questions about your expenses, but specifically questions about expenses in regard to housing, student loans, food, clothing, transportation, and healthcare costs. Those are all taken into account in the calculation of financial aid. And as I said, there's an opportunity to list other expenses, out-of-pocket expenses. Those often will include something like summer camps or sports fees, things like that. And then asking about, as I said, other families that live in the household. And a big one that is important is other children in tuition charging schools, because that's really important to know how much a family could afford for our specific school, because you're getting just a portion of the available money for education for all your children. So that's important. And then there's an open-ended question at the end where you're asked to share anything else. And I would really encourage you to fill that out, and just provide us with more context so that we know your financial circumstances. An example that often gets brought up is with bonuses and income changing year to year. Where do I reflect that? How do I share that with the financial aid committee? And that open-ended part at the end is a great spot just to say, I made this much this year, but next year I'm not going to. Here's why. Or 2 years ago I didn't. And there would then be a chance for us to see that and ask for follow-up documentation or verification of maybe 2 years ago your tax returns, so we can see how your income has fluctuated and take that into account. So it's a nice spot. It's really helpful just to know more about who's living in the house and anything like that. Anything that's impacting your financial picture that hasn't already been asked about in a specific question, great spot to put it. And we really encourage you to give us that context, please. And then there will be a question about how much do you think you can pay toward your child's education? And do you have any outside sources of payment coming, like a family member contributing to your child's tuition? So those are questions you can expect to be asked. And then some schools are focused on your prior year tax returns. So for this year, just looking at your 2023 tax returns and not your current year, your 2024. But some schools are going to look at your 2024 and your 2023, either or, combination. So really it's school to school. Some schools will ask for things like your end of year pay stubs or your profit and loss sheet. So it really, it's going to vary a little bit. Each school has its own unique way of approaching that. So just again, as Laurie mentioned, really look at schools' websites individually, see what platform they're using, see what their requirements are and what tax year they're looking at. And feel free to reach out to financial aid directors or financial aid coordinators and ask those questions specifically. Let's see.
Channing, if you want, I can jump in for, as you were talking, it reminded me of a couple more tips I wanted to add, if that's okay. So based on everything Channing just said, yes, it's going to be a lot of information. Clarity has tried to make it easy and kind of ease that application process for you families. But again, just giving you that stressing the importance, sit down with that information beside you. As you sit down, have those tax returns, have that tuition bill, bank statements, your mortgage, because it's going to help you filling this out if you have that information at your fingertips. And as everything Channing just said, reasons why is this is important. Obviously, you want to be qualified for financial aid. You want to show and demonstrate your need. And it's so important to be thorough in your application.
Yes, I completely agree. Take your time. And then just to let you know, overall, what the financial aid committee is looking at is your income and then taking out your taxes and your expenses, adding back a portion of your assets, and then getting sort of an overall picture, overall wealth picture. And these platforms use an algorithm to determine your discretionary income. And then the school is looking at what portion or determining what portion of that discretionary income can be paid for the education of that specific child at this school. Again, so if there's more than one child, there's sort of a limited amount of the educational amount that of your percentage of your discretionary income that should go towards education. It's going to be divided up if you have multiple children in tuition charging schools. If after you filled out your application on January 15th, if there is a major change that happens at any point, between January 15th and March 10th, please reach out directly to the school, to the director of financial aid, and let them know, because as you go through that time at the school, if you're there for all 4 years and changes do occur, it's really just about communicating with the school, and the schools want to work with you and make sure that we know your financial picture very clearly, and can try to meet your needs. So I'm going to pass it back to Laurie.
Yeah, sure thing. So other things that might be on your mind is if you are awarded and you accept that award, you enroll at the school. Do you have to apply each year? And the answer for us, and I imagine most schools, but again, can't speak to all of them, is that yes, it's an annual application process. So you should be expecting to fill that out each year that your child is enrolled at St. Mark's. And that is because we need to evaluate each year your situation and your demonstrated need for financial aid. Again, a little bit of what Channing touched upon. Maybe there's a major change in your income. Maybe you have a child in or now out of a tuition charging school. For example, an older child could be graduating that year from college, and they're no longer in that tuition charging school. Or you now have a younger child who's at a private day school or a local school that does charge tuition. So those are things that would have to be considered each year. And it may impact the funds or award that is given to you by the school. Generally, we try not to change your award. That's not what we're looking to do. But it's just making sure that qualified families are receiving that aid.
Yes, and we are a need-based school, so demonstrated need. We are trying to meet that demonstrated need. Some schools have merit aid, some have scholarship. We do not. So it is really important to go on each school's website and see if it's need-based only or if they do have merit or scholarship aid. And you can expect likely a different financial aid award depending on that. And as Laurie sort of mentioned, typically your financial aid award will stay the same year after year if nothing else has really changed significantly. So when you do consider enrolling at a school, and you'd want to be able to decide, can you pay that year after year, that amount that they're asking for, expecting that it's probably going to stay pretty close to that, pending no changes. And then I just want to address, there were questions about divorce and single parent households and the exemption process there for non-custodial parents. In the event of single parent homes, some schools will ask for verification that there is not another parent in contact with the child or involved in the child's life. And so sometimes that will involve a documentation process of just verifying that. And each school has a different process there. So there may be an exemption there. Or sometimes there's a third party verification process. So those are things that you'll be prompted when you fill out for us clarity and we see a single parent there, you could expect to have a follow-up documentation request for some more information. In the case of divorce or separated households or never married in two different households, each household would likely in most cases be filling out their own individual financial aid application for the same child applying. That information is confidential to that household. It does not get shared between the households. So the other household cannot see, household A can't see what household B submitted. And then when we process the application, we are looking at the total that can be afforded for that child, adding each household together. And we do not say household A pays this amount of the total and household B pays that amount of the total. We would just say family needs to pay X amount, and the family needs to decide who pays what at that point. So so that's how that awarding works for us. Some schools may have a different process there. But we do often get asked if the other household can see what's been submitted, and they cannot. So we've had a question about the financial aid wait list and how that works. Some schools use a financial aid wait list if the funds have all been exhausted and spent, and they can't fund everybody who is qualified for admission. There may be cases where a child is put on a financial aid wait list, or they may get an admission accept with a full pay contract, or they might get an admission wait list or deny. It just depends on the school and their process. So that's a question that really we can't answer to speak for other schools. We've had years where we've used a financial aid list and years where we haven't. So it really just depends on that school. So and each school is going to have a different way of going to the financial aid wait list. Maybe it's ranked, maybe it's specific for a need of the school, like a certain grade that they're trying to fill. And so if you're on a admission wait list or a financial aid wait list, you may need to wait until closer to April 10th for the school to have figured out who has accepted enrollment and who has declined enrollment, and is there more funds available? Is there a specific spot that they're trying to fill for in a grade or something like that? So so the school, it's tough because you might have to wait a little while, but we ask that you be patient. And as decisions start coming in, a lot of families will wait until revisit days, which are that first week of April, typically, at least for us, where they get to do the revisit at the school and they get to learn more before making that decision, which means that our school isn't learning about their enrollment decision until right up until like sort of April 9th, April 10th. And so that patience can feel long for families. And we don't know which way it would go in the end.
I was just saying you guys did a great job of hitting our halfway point with the first part of the presentation. So that is excellent. With our half point, I would love for you guys to share a little bit about St. Mark's. Take a few minutes to dive into, what your school is all about for anyone who's interested. And of course, we will be getting right back to the Q&A very shortly. We've got some important discussions coming up on the appeals process and some other big questions that I know a lot of folks are wondering about. So let me share my screen.
Thank you. I'll just jump back in. So St. Mark's School, we are located in Southborough, Massachusetts, which is about 30 minutes outside of Boston, west of Boston, 27 miles to be specific, and between Boston and Worcester. And as you can see on the screen here, we are intentionally small at 377 students this year. That fluctuates each year between 365 and up to 380 is kind of our enrollment number. Intentionally small, thinking big. If you go to the next screen, next slide. So we're small. We have Laurie, actually, you have all the ratios here for student to faculty ratios, but we do have a very close faculty to student ratio. Do you want to share what that is specifically?
Yeah. So for all of our faculty, it's actually 4-to-1. If you're looking at just teaching faculty, it's 6-to-1. So it is really close-knit, and there is so many opportunities for students to get to know the faculty and faculty to get to know the students. We like to say it's in the classroom, outside the classroom, on the fields, in advisory group, chapel, sit-down meals. It's really a wonderful community in that sense, and it feels like kind of like a second family.
Yep. And she mentioned chapel. We are an Episcopal affiliated school, running an interfaith chapel program. Um, and so it's the chapel program. We meet twice a week for 30 minutes in the mornings on Tuesdays and Fridays. And it's a really great special time for our community to come together. More about our community, more statistics here. We are usually right at 75% boarding and 25% day, as you can see, with 24 states represented and 15 countries. As Lori shared, 86% of the faculty live on campus in that ratio of one faculty to four in the around campus overall. And we have an average class size of 11 students in a class this year. Fun fact, our school was founded in 1865. So we have been around a long time. And oh, there's the location. Yep. Location to Boston, location to Worcester. There's a train, a commuter rail that goes right into Boston. And we have great weekend activities. Kids can go into Boston, or we have activities on campus. But it's great, and also great for those of you coming from farther away. The Logan Airport is really easy to get to. Um, and let's see. Yeah, so the boarding and day, there's some pictures there. Um, we have so we're called sort of a school under one roof. As the school's expanded over the years, we've added a few more buildings, but that sense of community and having everybody in the hallways, in the classrooms together, intentionally meeting as a all school community almost every single day. We really value that close-knit feel of campus, and those relationships between students, between faculty and students. And so it's a really special place that if you're interested, we'd love to have you come visit, and we can give you a tour. And as Lori mentioned too, the application Gateway and SAO are the applications that we use, also due on January 15th. So we've got, you're a few months out, but it is gonna kind of come pretty quickly, I think, with the holidays coming up. Anything else, Lori, that you wanted to add? Oh, that's our new dorm.
I know. No, I think what you've added so far is great. And I know that there are, a number of slides. So yeah, some of these you can just quickly see and read also. Patterson Scully, we're really proud of that new dormitory. Took a couple of years to build, and actually we call our dormitories houses. But those are some great pictures. It's innovative. It's looks like a college campus in a way to me. So I think if you saw that, you'd be pretty impressed too. More about the academic program on this slide. Channing went over the average class side. It says 12, but it's actually 11 this year. Our faculty are really impressive. Again, they're classes that I would want to take too. We have traditional classes Monday through Friday, and Saturday are our experiential classes. So you're going to see a variety of pictures there. The Saturday classes are really fun. Here's some other things about our educational outcomes here in how we operate, what is our philosophy, especially in the classrooms.
Yes, and I think that number 4 there. Oh, sorry, if you could just go back one. The number 4 of the holistic sort of mind, body, and spirit. I think with our wellness program, and with all the different supports we have for our students, and our athletics requirement and our arts built into the academic day, it's a full picture approach to education, and we really care about our students' health overall, in the classroom, outside the classroom. And so that next picture is actually, if you could go to that next slide, experiential learning, as Lori mentioned. So Monday through Friday is a little different than the Saturday, and the Lion term at the end of the year. So we do have the mission of St. Mark's Leadership and Service. We have a lot of opportunities for leadership and service, and so learning more about our experiential program, which is a 2.5 hour block on Saturdays. We have 14 Saturday classes throughout the year, so 7 in the fall semester and 7 in the spring semester. where there are some core classes that are form-based by grade, and then some that are experiential in nature. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested, and we can share more. And then Lion Term at the end of the year, there's a lot of travel opportunity. Global citizenship is a big piece. We have a global diploma as well as a classics diploma in Latin and Greek. And so we have a lot of trips throughout the year, in particular in the spring and the summer, but we also offer a school year abroad program. So it's a big part. Languages and travel is a big part of our school as well. Can see some of the places there. And yep, we compete in the ISL, and that's one of our newly renovated spaces, the Coolidge Center. Yep. I coach lacrosse. That's the turf field that we play on.
And then, yeah, we have a really robust arts program too, both visual and, performance and music and play. I don't know if Channing got to go see the play that was just put on by our students. It was a Harry Potter one, and it was well attended. Both nights were sold out, so I didn't get to go. But it's very cool in a black box theater. So that's something that even if you're not comfortable, performing as an actor or actress, you could help with the technical theater. There's lots of opportunities. If you're not into sports, you might be more into music or vice versa. Kind of something for everybody. And there we go.
Yeah, and the QR code if you'd like. With that, we are going to jump back in to our financial aid presentation and talk about the appeal process. There were questions about whether or not you can appeal after you receive your financial aid decision and your award. And it depends on the school. Some schools have a formal review or appeal process. And if you reach out, you will find out what they have if they do offer that. And if they do have a formal process, it likely is going to be a form that they share with you where they're asking for follow-up questions. In particular, what did we not take into consideration, or what has changed? Or a lot of times within a set of schools that are need-based, you could say, was there another, because all the schools have different professional judgment settings, was there an award on another need-based school that was different from ours? Likely the answer would be yes. And we would share more about that. And so it is worth asking if you feel that award is not reachable, or is not something that, that you want more information about or want to ask further questions about. Schools will often engage in an appeal and review process. So it always goes back to communicating ahead of time when things change, communicating with the schools that you are applying for aid, communicating after March 10th to say you have some questions and follow up. But I think it really does, communicating with each school and not assuming that answer is going to apply to other schools. It needs to be school to school. Let's see. Laurie, do you want to talk about international aid?
Yes. Yep. Happy to. Because I know that there were some questions about this. And yes, couple things on the international. First, people are wondering, can you apply as an international family for financial aid? The answer is not so easy or clear cut, but it's generally yes, you can apply at least, to St. Mark's, but you're going to need to check each school because some schools are not able to accept international applications. And so check with your school. The reason why I say it's complicated or not clear cut is that families outside the US have obviously various backgrounds, circumstances where they're living, cost of living, lifestyles can be vastly different outside the United States. Your income or salary level, how you get paid. taxes. Does your country even file taxes, or what's that equivalent? What does that look like? The currency, can be so vastly different too. So those are some things that we can tell you or answer about international. Also, families have asked before, how do I know if I'm considered international? Well, if your parents, or you as the parent, are working for an employer that's in the United States and you file US taxes, but maybe living abroad, then you're kind of on the cusp there. But if you do not file US taxes at all and have obviously an international employer, yes, you are international. And you would have to do your best when filling out the platform. I know that was a question, at least in the chat. Um, Obviously the form that I mentioned earlier, IRS 4506, does not apply to you, and you don't have W-2s or 1040s. So we're going to be looking, at least again for St. Mark's, for salary verification, employer information, whatever bank statements you might be able to provide to us that will all help us when considering your international application.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we do have a few more questions from Darren that he's received. So we'll pass it to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, so going through some of the other questions that we got, I think a lot of people are wondering and, planning ahead and trying to figure out, how they would budget the paying for tuition. Is there an average award amount that they can kind of file away in the back of their heads for thinking about it?
That's a great question. And again, it's going to depend school to school. Some schools do list their average awards on their website. So it is worth really looking thoroughly at their website to see what information they are sharing out, including income brackets and who's getting aid and how much in different income brackets. So things like that. So definitely check out the website, but I wouldn't know an average award that's really sort of broadly speaking to different schools.
Okay, thank you. You guys did a great job of sort of talking about the expectations around filing taxes and that sort of stuff. Is it a time period where it's too early to apply? Like what's the earliest when they can say, and you'd also mentioned, don't wait till the deadline. So, where's that sweet spot on where they should be thinking about submitting the application?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Darren. Thank you. Great question. So I believe Clarity might actually open to start receiving applications most years as early as 9/1, or I'm sorry, September 1 or mid-September. But we typically send out the information to let you know the platform is live and accepting applications around early October. So while there may not be a, perfect time, I would say as soon as you're ready, go ahead and do it. Sometime between October and again, we've got that January 15th, but let's aim for January 14th.
Thank you. That makes good sense. In terms of obviously cost of living varies, and you mentioned this, with the international discussion, but even domestically quite a bit. Is that something that gets factored into the allocation that you might be giving?
For our school, and I think for most schools, yes, cost of living in different areas is taken into account. And so that can be factored in a few different ways based on how the school is using their financial aid platform. But generally speaking, or at least for St. Mark's, yes, we do take into account how if an area is very expensive to live in and how far your income can actually go for you. Yes.
All right. We did get one, question through the chat, and I think we get time, so I'd like to throw it in here. For someone who's filling out the application, not all pieces of it apply to this person who's applying internationally, but they can't skip it. I don't know if they were using Clarity or which one they're doing. What would you recommend that they do in that situation?
They weren't able to skip a certain section of the application that was requiring something.
Yeah, should they just go straight to the school?
I was going to say go straight to the platform too. I think oftentimes it's a platform that if that kind of falls into that tech support that Lori had mentioned. Sometimes just the first step of reaching out to the platform to say, this is my situation. There may have been a box that wasn't checked or something to be able to clearly identify what the issue was. But Lori, is that what you would say as well?
Yes. Yep.
All right. For staying with the international vibe, if somebody is not a native English speaker, do they need to get their application answers transcribed before sending it, or can they submit it in their native language?
Yes, they can submit in their native language, and right now Clarity I know does offers Spanish. I don't know if what other platforms are offering, but for example, if you're submitting tax returns in another language, we do not require you to transcribe those for us. We have other tools that we can use. So I can just answer on that for us, but.
All right, thank you. Next question, we're kind of into the speed round now. What is the paying criteria for granting financial support?
Yeah, that's going to be unique to each school. Often you'll hear people talk about mission alignment. Each school has a different mission. It's helpful to go look at what their mission statement is. And so mission alignment will be a factor, but it really is going to depend on each school. So that's going to be a case by case. So there's no set answer for what are who's going to be given that financial award. Certainly you have to be qualified, admission qualified and mission aligned.
Excellent, thank you. Another common question that we're getting, folks wondering, whether or not they would qualify for aid. Is there opportunities for upper middle class families to get aid?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's why it's important to go ahead and fill out the financial aid application if you're looking at the tuition and saying this is going to be a hardship or a stretch for our family, and see what the result is. You might you might not qualify for aid, but you wouldn't know unless you fill out that application. And sometimes you would qualify, but the financial aid budget has been already spent, and so it's definitely worth asking if that's a concern for you. And clearly, if you're on this webinar, maybe you have that question. I would advise to fill it out rather than not. And some schools have a policy that if you didn't fill it out in that first year, you can't fill it out in the years after, pending big financial changes. So I personally, I would suggest filling out the financial aid application in that first year of admission, than applying for admission. But and we do have families from the wide range of income. So and again, some schools list that on their website.
Excellent, thank you. Is it a problem for families where it's parents are separated or divorced, but they have joint custody, and one of the parents is not, submitting their information or willing to participate with that? What happens in that situation?
That's a great question. And I again go back to overly communicating, sort of more is really helpful, whether that's an individual email to the financial aid director or within Clarity in that open-ended box, just writing a little bit about your unique circumstances. It's always helpful for us to know that and then to be able to reach out and sort of follow up with you and understand your unique situation there and what should be done in your situation. So definitely sharing that is helpful. And again, it's all confidential to that financial aid committee.
Excellent. This next question sounds entirely like something I would do, so I'm going to put it in first person. If I submit my application and realized, oh, I should have put something in or I messed something up, can I change or edit my application after the fact?
Yes, so the financial aid committee can lock the application and not allow that. So if it is locked and it doesn't allow you to make a change, I would suggest reaching out via email or call to each school to say, I made this mistake. I need to change something, because then they could unlock and allow that change, or you could just email them the change and they could keep that in mind. So when errors happen or changes need to be made, just reach out again. Is that my suggestion?
Excellent. Thank you. Next question, if a parent is unemployed and they collect unemployment, do they have to report that as income?
Yeah, so there is a section that asks about unemployment income, and that would be considered income.
Oh, next question, good one. So if you've got a base salary, which they are reporting on the form, but also a bonus compensation that can change, how's that evaluated? How do they factor for that?
And again, that's going to be that information at the bottom and saying there's a question in there that asks about anticipated income next year. And then if this was a year where you did better than in years past and you don't expect that to happen again, all that information really helpful to know. And then the school may ask again for tax returns from a different year, or that maybe the end of year pay stub, or again, that profit and loss sheet to show what this current year looks like. So there's definitely some follow-up questions that will happen, but we certainly want to know that information. Again, we're trying to meet your needs. So if this 2023 year is not reflective of what you actually are going to be earning, we would want to know that, so we can take that into consideration.
We would kind of consider that one of the reasons why you have to reapply every year as well.
Exactly. Yep.
So in that vein, if a family applies to the school this year and they do not require financial aid, but their circumstance changes and their child is going into their second year in the school, can they apply at that time if they didn't initially?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. Thanks, Channing. You've been answering the bulk of these. So that is, again, we don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it is going to depend. We recommend applying at the time of admission if there's anything you can anticipate that you're going to have a need for financial aid. That's ideal. But yes, as Darren put in that question, sometimes people's circumstances change. So you could apply a second year or third year that your child is enrolled at the school. It's just going to depend on that demonstrated need and if the school has any money left over in their budget, because their priority is typically to the returning families already on aid or to the new families that they want to bring in and have the ability to provide aid for. So check your school's policy around that.
Excellent. You guys had mentioned something earlier in the presentation about, always letting the school know when you need to apply for aid. The more information you know up front, the better you can support the family throughout the process and get them the information that they're going to need. What about in a situation, where a family is using a common application form and they initially go into that and check, we don't need financial aid, but as they get deeper into the process, maybe their circumstances changes, or as they're looking at different schools that have different tuition levels and costs for travel and things like that, they may think, wow, we actually probably would need some financial aid to go to school X, even though we didn't need it at school Y. Can they come back on that at that point and still advance and submit financial aid?
Yeah, that is a great one and understandable and somewhat common. So the answer is pretty much yes. We would recommend that they reach out to us right away as soon as they know that suddenly, hey, we are going to be applying and we need financial aid. The sooner we know, the better. We can't guarantee that, depending on the time, that there is going to be money or funds available. But of course, we would, be able to try to work with that family and consider a late application, as we call it.
Excellent. That is a wrap on what we have for time for questions today. I want to thank you both in St. Mark's, of course, for sponsoring this presentation and making it possible. We really do appreciate it. And to our audience, thank you very much for all your questions and for joining us today. Please be on the lookout. We have other presentations coming up. And if you visit our YouTube channel, we have more Q&A there. You can get answers on some of the other financial aid questions that we didn't get to today.
Thank you so much, Darren. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. This was a fun afternoon in answering these questions and providing the information. Thank you.
Good luck.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.